Okay, you don't want to miss this one. Christina and I are going to dig into the 2024 Canadian budget. It's ugly. Let's go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Control and Compound. I'm Darren Mitchell, and joining me as always, Christina Wyatt. Christina, budget time.
Budget time. This one is a hot topic this week, so I'm happy that we get a chance to chat a little bit more about it. Before we jump in, though, I am going to remind everybody, if you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, please make sure you subscribe and leave that 5-star review. If you're listening or watching on YouTube, please like, subscribe, and hit that bell button so you always know when new content is coming out. And don't forget to follow us on our socials at Control and Compound on Instagram and TikTok. I wanted to get that out of the way because I know we're going to dig in here and it's going to get it's going to get passionate. It could get ugly, right? So I wanted to get that out of the way so that we can jump into the budget because it's a doozy.
Yeah, and like, what we're talking about here, like we are champions for entrepreneurs, for real estate investors, for business owners, and we when we speak up against policies that are bad for that, it's not necessarily political. It's just we're so frustrated when we see the effect it has on business owners and real estate investors because we talk to them every day, and we see real estate investors going to the States. We see them leaving jurisdictions that the government makes it hard to do business in. We see that money flowing into other countries, and as a proud Canadian, I want that money coming to Canada or staying in Canada. So when I look at this budget, if I were to get a title for this budget, I would call it Lie to Young Canadians, Punish Entrepreneurship, and Scare Away Money that should be invested into Canada so our productivity continues to decline. Like that's I think what this budget is going to accomplish. Like they say they're going to solve the housing crisis. Like you can't make this stuff up. The reason we have a housing crisis is the government printed unlimited amounts of cash. The government increased their debt, our debt, massively. They took in almost 4 million people in a little over 3 years with no regards to where they're going to live, where they're going to be housed, what it's going to do to housing. All this caused a major housing crisis, and now the government is going to fix this housing crisis. And then it gets worse. Sean Fraser was the immigration minister who was warned by his bureaucrats, this is going to cause housing problems if we allow this many people in this quick. Didn't do anything about it, allows all these people to go in, and now he's the housing minister that's going to solve this. And then I read a report yesterday, you can't make this up, Christina. The Canadian government said we need more skilled workers. We just brought in 4 million people. Do you think we could have brought in a few more carpenters or tradespeople? Like, we've got this huge housing problem that was created by the government, and now the government thinks they're going to solve it. And I don't know about you, but I don't remember a lot of government projects that came in on time, under budget, and people go, what a great efficient way to run something, the way the government runs it. So I'm scared to see what's going to happen in the next few years as a result of this budget. Maybe I'll calm down in a few days, but right now the calls we're getting from business owners and real estate investors, it's not good news for the economy.
No, it's not good news at all. And I know I like your name for the budget. The actual name that they were going with was Lifting Up Every Generation. So making life cost less for millions. Which is a little bit contradicting of what's really happening. And one of the biggest things, we're going to jump into more of the hot topics and the hot changes when it comes to taxes and kind of stuff that's more impacting business owners and whatnot. But I think it's really deflecting, like it's really taking away from the debt issues, like the actual underlying issues that they have now shone a light on these other things, which we're definitely going to dig into them. But if you look at it, they have $40 billion deficit this year, right? The Ottawa's now set to spend 52.9, so $53 billion more planned over the next 5 years. The growing pile of debt, we're now at 1.4 trillion. So over the last 9 years, it's doubled, and it's eating away at more of the taxpayers' money, right? Like they have to be able to service this debt, and that's a huge problem. And they're going to solve it with these additional taxes to the wealthy individuals out there. And everyone's turning to how they're going to solve it. But like literally the cost to service this debt is now $2 billion more than it was projected a few months ago. So the interest rates are running high. The cost to service the national debt is now surpassing what we're spending in healthcare spending. That is, yeah. And what we're spending in healthcare, we are now spending to service our debt. And we have taken the light from that and they have deflected it onto all of these changes that they're making for the better. And I think I wanted to start there, right? Because we should really, that's a big one to mention, that they have not balanced the budget. The budget's worse than it's ever been, and it doesn't seem to be getting any better. But let's jump into how they're going to fix it.
Yeah, well, I think budgets don't they balance themselves, Christina? But like to spend more on debt servicing than healthcare, crazy numbers. Okay, let's dig into it. Let's save the capital gains. That's the big one I want to get into. But let's talk about some of the other ones first. What do you want to start with?
So we'll talk about one that's more. It's positive. It's definitely not a bad thing. Well, yes, we're going to talk about the other side of the coin with it, but the lifetime capital gains exemption, it was increased. So they did increase it. It's around $1 million right now. And they are proposing that they move it up. So they're moving it up to 1.25 million of eligible capital gains. So this is going to take into effect June 25th, which a lot of the other changes are. We have a two-month window before this change happens, but they're going to increase that to 1.25. So yes, that looks good on one side of things for business owners that want to sell. But with that capital gains change that we're going to dig into a bit more, it doesn't even itself out, right? We're going to see some issues on the other side.
Yeah. So in a perfect world, if you sold your business for $1.25 million come July or after, you're going to save a little bit of money versus what you would have if you sold today. But because anything over that amount, the inclusion rate on the capital gains has increased. Once you get to $2 million, sell your corporation for $2 million, well, now it's a wash. So today, if you sell it for $2 million, $1 million is tax-free, and on that $1 million of gain, 50% is included, and you'd pay, say, roughly 50% tax on that $500,000 or $250,000. In July, or after this is passed in June, if it's passed, now you're $2 million. Well, 1.25 is tax-free. $750 is included. 2/3 of that, so $500,000 capital gain. So it would be a wash at $2 million. Once you surpass $2 million, you're going to pay more and more tax significantly. You sell your business for like 10, 11 million bucks, you're paying an extra $750,000 in tax. Now, this could be a business that you had for 40 years with 10 partners, and you were, building it up at an increased in value over that 40 years, but they're going to basically retroactively go back to 40 years and say, well, what it was worth then versus now, you're going to pay tax on all of that at this higher inclusion rate. So, I guess you can say it's good news if you happen to be in that sweet spot when you sell your business. But for most business owners, especially, a lot of these businesses, there's multiple partners and stuff. So they're, you sell it for millions of dollars, but there's debt, and there's all kinds of things to be included. That doesn't mean the entrepreneur is actually netting that. But that's the lifetime capital gains exemption increase.
Yeah. So we had that change for business owners. Now, I think to kind of offset the capital gains changes for business owners, they are implementing the Canadian Entrepreneurs Incentive. So on the surface, does sound good. Again, on the surface, it does sound like it could be a good thing, right? On the surface, but you have to be a specific kind of entrepreneur in order to qualify for this one. So the Canadian Entrepreneur Incentive, this one's not going to occur until after January 1st, 2025. But what it's going to do is it's going to reduce tax rates on capital gains on the disposition of qualifying shares by an eligible individual by reducing capital gains on the sale of their business. So instead of paying 1/2, they're going to pay 1/3 with the Canadian Entrepreneurs Incentive. It's going to slowly grow to $2 million. It'll start at $200,000. So what that means is, if you sell, and we're going to get into a specific entrepreneur sells their business for over that 1.25 amount over the capital gains exemption, lifetime capital gains exemption, that overage up to 200,000 for that first year is going to be 1/3 tax capital gains at that point in time.
So if you sold it like 200,000, it's only 1/3 capital gains. But if you sold it for like 400,000 additional gain, the next 200,000 on top of that would be at 2/3 inclusion. So that would be a wash too. So, again, on those really small numbers, you might have some increase, but on most businesses, you're gonna pay a lot more.
Yeah, and the thing with this one is you have to qualify. So you have to qualify just like you do with the lifetime capital gains exemptions. Rules are still the same there. But here's the kicker. This is the big one. So you also have to be a certain type of entrepreneur. So let's dig into what type of entrepreneur you can actually be in order to take advantage of this.
Yeah. So basically, they've said they've called it the Canadian entrepreneur. But they said these are the people we like and these are the people we don't like in the entrepreneur category. So they said we don't like doctors, we don't like dentists, we don't like accountants, we don't like anyone in the financial services, we don't like anyone in the insurance business, we don't like restaurants, we don't like real estate investors. All those people I just mentioned, the government's not going to allow them to qualify for this Canadian entrepreneur incentive. So they're going to be stuck with the higher capital gains that we're going to get to. So if you're in some specific type of company that the Canadian government favors, great. You get a slightly better deal when you go to sell your corp. But if you're in any of those excluded companies or industries that I mentioned, then nope, you're on your own. You're going to pay the higher amount. Not just, you don't get a reduced amount than you have today. You're going to pay a higher amount on a go-forward basis.
Which is really singling them out. And what bothers me the most about this one is the doctors with their professional corporations, right? If you're a doctor, you have a professional corp, you're not working for the hospital, you're still assisting patients every day. They don't have pensions. What they're doing is they're saving in their professional corporations instead, right? That is their retirement. That's where they're saving. And now they're saying, hey, we're gonna penalize you for that. You're not going to be considered an entrepreneur here in Canada. And how much do we need doctors right now? Like, that is, if someone's sitting down and deciding where they want to live, where they want to work, that is not to single out doctors. It just blows my mind. Like, that really bothers me with this. And we're tagged into the lump sum of not being entrepreneurs here, but it still bothers me more that they're going to look at doctors and say, hey, we're going to make sure that you're not going to get your retirement that you've set up in your professional corporation because we're going to change this. We're going to change this on you. Not ideal.
I thought, when I gave up my corporate job and I started my own small business with zero clients and zero business in my first year, that I was an entrepreneur. But according to the Canadian government, apparently I'm not an entrepreneur, which drives me crazy. But we get a lot of doctor clients that are upset about this. But I talked to an advisor, a friend of mine, the other day, and he almost works exclusively with doctors, more on the money side. And I go, how's your day going? He goes, well, I had 12 calls today from doctors going, what the hell am I doing in this country? Like, they were so frustrated with the budget because it's been thing after thing. Every budget, it seems, it comes out, we're penalizing these professionals, increased taxes. And they're saying, am I going to be able to retire? Like, when you start making these retroactive changes to people that have been doing planning for 10, 20, 30 years, and then which is their pension they're planning for, right? Because they don't have these big, fancy, gold-plated government pensions. And then you say retroactively, we're going to change the amount of tax that you're going to pay when you sell a piece of property, a business, stock portfolio, you name it. Like, it's devastating for some of these entrepreneurs where they don't have the pensions, and you start increasing their taxes substantially. We're gonna lose doctors, and it's going to be even tougher to attract doctors.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's putting, the tax, just changing those taxes. And we talk about it all the time. Tax is your biggest wealth destroyer. And when we don't plan for tax and these changes happen, that's putting the the government's in charge of your planning, which is unfortunate, and it's scary, but that's what's happened here with a lot of people. And they're saying it's 1%. Like, I don't know where they did their math. They said not going to impact 99% of individuals across Canada. That is absurd. You can look at it right here and you can see that just anybody with a professional corporation, their retirement has been impacted today, right? Like today, all the planning needs to change. It's all been, and they're going to pay, like they're going to end up paying for it, the taxes. So not ideal. So those were two of the other announcements that we wanted to talk about, but the big one, right? Like the biggest one, the one that everybody's talking about, is those capital gains tax changes. So we really want to dig in here because it does impact impacts business owners, impacts real estate investors. It impacts everybody at the end of the day. I know they're saying, like I said, 1% of the people, but it's going to impact a lot of people.
Yeah, and let's talk with capital gains exemption. I'm gonna do a quick sort of example with math, and if you're watching on YouTube, we'll put this on here. But if you're listening, I'll just walk you through the math. And so basically, what they said for capital gains is, right today, everything is called a 50% inclusion. So if you sell a property, you sell a stock portfolio, you sell a business, and you make $100,000 capital gain. 50% of that is included, or it's a 50% inclusion rate. So in other words, half of your gain is taxable. Okay. So if we kind of walk through the examples, what they're going to do going forward is they're going to say, okay, if you're personally selling something, the first $250,000 of the gain will still be 50% inclusion, but over that, it's going to be 2/3 inclusion, which is a significant increase in the overall tax you'll pay, and you'll see in a minute. But if you have a corporation, and this is what really frustrates me as a supporter of small businesses in this country, if you have a small business, if you have something owned inside a corporation, they are going to single you out and say, you need to pay more tax than an individual. In Canada, we always had something called tax integration, where it didn't matter if you took your income personally or corporately, you would pay the same net effect. As of July, that's going to be different. They are going to single out and punish people with businesses. So I'll walk you through the math, because what they say, if you own it in a business, you don't get that $250,000 at 50% inclusion. It's 2/3 inclusion from $1. So if we walk through an example, let's say someone in Ontario had a cottage or a second property, and at the end of the day, they sell it, and there was a $600,000 capital gain. Now, this could be personal, or this could be a death or while they're alive. Small business owner, doesn't matter, $600,000 capital gain. So today, the way you'd pay tax on that, half of that, 50%, would be included in your tax return. So you'd have a $300,000 taxable gain. Assuming a 50% tax bracket, you'd pay about $150,000 in tax. Okay, so $150,000 in tax is what you pay today. Starting with the new rules, if you own it personally, that $600,000 gain, well, the first $250,000 would be 50% inclusion, so count it towards your tax, just like it is today. But the next $350,000 of that $600,000, 2/3 would be included. So that works out to, instead of a $300,000 taxable gain in the current scenario, the new one is going to be a $358,000 capital gain. So your net tax is $179,000 in change. So about a 13% increase in the amount of tax you're going to pay. However, if you happen to own that in a corporation, and again, people oftentimes put it in a corporation or holding company for liability reasons, just to protect themselves in case they get sued. Because we are always told as Canadians, tax integration, it didn't matter personally or corporately, you'd pay the same. Well, now they're going to go back and say, yeah, we know we told you that when you started buying this property 20 years ago, but now we changed our mind. We are going to take that $600,000 gain, and fully 2/3 of that, or 67%, is going to be included in your taxable return. So $400,000 of the $600,000 at 50% tax, that's a $200,000 tax bill. So today you sell that property in your corp, it's $150,000 tax. You sell your property in July, it's going to be a $200,000 tax, or a 33% increase. I'm not talking a 1, 2, 3, 5% increase in the amount of tax you're going to pay. It's a 33% increase just to single out and punish anyone that has a corporation. That is wrong. That is not good for the country. That is not good for our product lack of productivity. That is not going to get more money to come in. To put that in perspective, if you were in the United States and you sold a rental property and you made a $600,000 gain, and you put that money back into a new building or new rental property, you would pay $0 in tax. And in Canada, we pay big tax, and we just increased it 33%. Where do you think the money's going to flow?
Yeah, when you do the math, it is it's astonishing to see that they're saying it's not going to impact very many Canadians, right? It's going to impact all business owners immediately. And the first thing that I start thinking about, obviously, is, I do estate planning for a living, and you start going down the road of how this is going to impact everybody. Like, first, like I did say that 1% thing, that is completely incorrect, because when I do estate planning, you're looking at when a person passes away, everything that they own is completely disposed of. So they're saying, 250,000 as a capital gain for a typical Canadian will never happen. That's not going to happen to them. Well, the majority of them can very well, if they have a cottage, if they have a family cottage, they have a secondary home, secondary principal residence, or outside of their principal residence, that can easily go over the 250,000. So when we start talking about terminal tax returns and doing estate planning for the typical Canadian, like, I am not talking business owner at all right now. I'm talking a typical Canadian. They've got a family cottage that's been in their family for generations. It's been passed down to next generations. They've done their estate planning to make sure that, taxes were going to be taken care of for the kids to be able to keep that property. And now all of a sudden this change happens. They don't have the funds there to pay the taxes any longer, right? You look at a lot of those properties, especially, you look at Muskoka, those types of places where cottages are passed down through generations, there's a large amount of tax that's payable on death, right? Like, they've got to pay those tax bills, and they are going to be more than 250,000, and that's going to change things. So if someone, while they were healthy, put a life insurance policy in place to be able to handle those taxes, and now these changes have happened and they're past being able to apply for a new life insurance policy, that's it. They don't have the money for the taxes. That family now loses that cottage. Like, that's huge for a family, right? That's a regular Canadian out there that's going to be impacted by this. The same thing goes with corporate tax planning. We do some pretty strategic corporate estate planning, and it all has to take into consideration what the taxes are going to be when they pass away. There's different tax planning where we use capital gains for business owners so that they don't have double taxation for postmortem planning. That's all been impacted. All of it's changed. Like, all of the planning that we've done, we need to go back and we need to relook at it. We need to make sure that the funds are going to be available, because it's impacting all of it. The regular Canadian, the business owner, when it comes to estate planning, that's your biggest tax bill, and it's going to hit. Like, this change will hit for them, which is, I think, is really important, that we need to, take a step back, go revisit your planning, see what this is going to do. A couple other impacts that I immediately thought of is the passive income that we talk about all the time, right? Darren, like, we can only make 50,000 of passive income inside of our corporations. And then it becomes it then impacts our small business tax deduction. Before, you could make 100,000, have 50,000 of capital gains, you'd be okay. It's now dropped to 74,000. 74,627 is now going to create that 50,000 of passive income. That is not a huge amount for a business owner to create passive income inside of their corporations, right? Like, that can happen very quickly. And what blows my mind is that it's going to happen regardless. We don't have time to plan for it, right? Like, these investments have already been made. It's going to happen now, regardless. We can't change it. We can't change our planning. It's something that we need to think about.
Yeah, it's like to basically retroactively people did planning years ago based upon what the rules were, and it wasn't from this point forward. They're going to go back and say all those capital gains you had, we're gonna tax differently. And the ironic thing, Christina, I had a couple friends call and say, "Wow, this must be great for your business." And I mean, yes, insurance is still tax free. This cash value life insurance works even better in a higher tax environment. But we're not celebrating this. we're not celebrating this because we care about our clients, we care about business owners and real estate investors, and without them, the economy doesn't function. So, 100% insurance is even more important now than it was before. It's one of the last thing business owners and real estate investors have to defer or eliminate tax. But this is not good for those businesses and real estate investors to reinvest, to make more money, to grow the economy, to grow their net worth. It's just bad news.
Well, and the other one that we haven't even mentioned yet is it's not just corporations, it's trusts as well. This applies to trusts. So people have done their planning, and the reason that they're using trusts is because they want to make sure that their legacy lives on the way that they want to do it, right? And they've incorporated the fact that there's going to be tax there. They know that. But for a person, someone that is not a corporation, is not a business owner, and they're using a trust for their estate planning and whatnot. Before, we know what we were getting ourselves into doing it that way. This changes the game. Like, they probably shouldn't have used a trust at this point, right? Now CRA is getting more of that legacy than they would have otherwise, and they might not have used that trust at all had they known, right? And now here we are, they're in that trust, and you're kind of stuck in it. Like, that's the planning that we've done. That's the retroactive portion that's really going to impact a lot of this planning. The trust thing's huge. Like, for individuals out there that have used these and used them as part of their planning, it's now changed, right? This has changed the planning altogether.
Yeah, and what frustrates me is, great, I understand taxes change and the government needs money and blah, blah, blah. But tax integration was the foundation, one of the foundations of our tax code, where personally and corporately, it didn't matter, you're going to be taxed the same. To single out business owners for that additional tax today, I just don't understand the rationale why you would single out and punish the lifeblood of the economy.
Yeah, now they're going to give us 2 months to figure it out, which this is where they think they're going to get their cash cow at the end of this. They said the tax measure is expected to net the government $19.3 billion over the next 5 years, $8.8 billion from individuals and $10.5 billion from companies. And that's to offset that $53 billion in additional spending that they've got, right? So it's by far the largest revenue measure in the budget and the first to change capital gains in a quarter century. So a lot of people are saying, are they going to be able to get this? Like, are people going to sell between now and June 25th? Are they going to go ahead and sell? Wealthy individuals tend to have very good strategies and very good plans. Are they going to trigger those taxes and hand over that money? I don't know. I would imagine there's going to be some planning happening. I've also heard of a lot of people saying, hey, hold out until the government changes. This is ludicrous, right? We're not going to do anything. We're just going to hold and wait because it could end up changing. But that's their plan. That is this here is their plan to pay that extra $53 billion going forward.
Crazy. Okay. Anything else in the budget, Christina, before we wrap up here?
Yeah, so I do think we should touch a bit on the home buyers and the real estate side of things as well. They did do some, but they did allocate in the budget $8.5 billion more to housing help. So the Housing Accelerator Fund, they're going to be taking public land and Canada Post outlets, turning them into affordable housing. They're offering tons of billions in loans to people for rentals, to build rentals, to do those secondary suites in their house, and to help nonprofits acquire more rental homes. So, like, they're saying that they are going to be able to do 3.87 million new homes by 2031. That's 550,000 homes per year that they're going to build. So we've never done it, guys. We've never done it, but we're going to do it now with this $8.5 billion that they're putting in. No, the other way that they're going to do it, though, is they're going to increase the home buyers plan. So now from your RSP, you can withdraw 60,000 instead of 35. They also threw in that the first time home savers account where you got that 8,000. So that should increase it. And then they're going to allow 30-year mortgages for first time home buyers, but only if they're purchasing new construction. You got to be in that new construction sweet spot in order to do that. That starts August 1st. So I I don't know if this, I don't think this is going to help the housing problem, right? Like everything that they've done on the other side it's negating what they're doing on this side, because so last year in 2023, we had 240,000 new builds. So only half of what we need every year going forward. And who were these built by, Darren? I'm going to go with investors. Investors are typically building. I know they're going to bring out their Canada Posts and whatnot, but they still need investors and they still need developers. They need people to do this. And the changes, those capital gains changes, are like, is it worth it for me to invest in Canada anymore? Another big one is they need land to build on. Well, is it worth it to me to sell my land if I'm going to pay higher capital gains? Maybe I should hold on to that land. I don't want to sell it until, maybe these changes change again for the better of me. So,
no, there's another new tax, Christina. They say they're going to come up with a vacant land tax too. They haven't announced the details. So if you're sitting on that vacant land, you're going to have to pay on top of your property taxes an additional tax on that. They're throwing the trial balloon out for that. But can I just go back to, so the most homes Canada's ever built in a year is 240,000. But now that the government is getting involved with their efficiencies and how good they are running operations, now we're going to build 550,000 new homes.
Well, that was new home starts. That was new home starts too. So I found it in like CMHC. They said there are 240,000 new home starts. And I know I've built before. It doesn't always just take a year. Just because they started in 2023 does not mean they were built. So there's 240,000 new build starts that happen. So I can't imagine all of those were built anyways, to be honest. I've seen it and I know it's not possible, especially if they started at the end of the year. So yeah, that number's not actually new homes that are out there for Canadians to start living in, right? So like people are speculating a couple things that could end up happening from these from these changes is one, like the smaller real estate investors that are holding on to, that have a couple rental properties and whatnot. It's great because you've got some housing for people. Well, they're going to say, I'm going to sell now and I'm going to sell before June because I'm going to get out of this. I'm going to take my cash and I'm going to get out of the rental market. And now that, 3 unit building is being turned back into 1 family building. Well, that's more housing that we're going to be out. So that could end up happening. People are saying there's a very good chance that we're going to see some of that happening. And then the other thing we're going to see is just a freeze. People are going to be like, I'm not doing anything. Like, it's just not worth it to me to do anything. I'm going to take my investments and I'm going to move elsewhere. And we hear about it all the time. People going investing down in the US, investing outside of Canada, or just holding, right? Just holding until they decide what they're going to do. So not a lot of positives that I think are going to come out of it. And they're kind of gearing it like younger people are going to be able to purchase houses because of these changes, which is a little bit like smoke and mirrors, right? Like I don't think that these changes are impacting the younger generation by much, because again, the supply and demand, if there's no supply out there, where are they going to purchase? How are they going to be able to say
Did these budget changes decrease the price of a home to half of what it is today, like it was 3-4 years ago, and drop the interest rates 4 or 5%? No, I don't think it did that, did it? No. But yet it's going to
we're planning on spending more money, and we're creating more like we're planning on spending more money. We're planning on servicing more debt. And the thing is that they need to incentivize investors to want to come in and to want to build here. And the problem with this budget is it's just not doing that, right? It's making people want to back away from Canada and not take that leap to invest here, which is 100% what we need.
Yeah, I mean, I believe small business owners are the lifeblood of the Canadian economy. They account for over half the jobs in the private sector. And those jobs and the tax that those employees pay and the entrepreneurs pay, those are what fund our hospitals and our social programs. But if you look at the measures of the Canadian government in the last 8 or 9 years, it's like they have a hate on for entrepreneurs and business owners. In 2015, they put a new tax bracket on for income earners over 200 grand. They reduced the TFSA. Then in 2016, they eliminated the income splitting. They stopped the plan reduction for the small business. They increased the employer CPP. You can't pay your kids anymore. They stopped the surplus strip. Passive investment inside a corporation, we had no limit before. Then they limited it to just $50,000 a year. And if you go over that and you have an operating company, the taxes are punishing 60, 70, 80%. Now we're going to increase the capital gains inclusion rate by 33%. That's going to mean a 33% increase in tax for business owners that sell anything. Now we're going to throw in rent control, eliminate Airbnb for tax deduction for a real estate investor people. And then the biggest tax of all is inflation. Like inflation has caused things to increase in value substantially. So now you sell and you pay all this extra tax because of the inflated value of that. It's still a 3-bedroom house you bought. It's still a 3-bedroom house in 10 years, but it increased in value so much because of this printing of the money. Now you're going to pay all this tax, and then you're not going to be able to go replace that with another 3-bedroom house if this is a second property. Like entrepreneurs and business owners can only take so much. And if you look at the stats, 20 years ago, 3 per 1,000 were entrepreneurs, 3 people per 1,000 Canadians. Well, today it's 1.3, right? There's not that incentive to be entrepreneurs anymore. And the productivity is shrinking, and the money that flows into Canada and Canadian businesses keeps shrinking because our productivity is getting less, our taxes are getting high, and they're literally singling out business owners now to say, you need to pay more than a person than someone that owns that same place personally or same asset personally. We are going to single you out to pay more tax. Entrepreneurs are mobile. Money is mobile. It can go anywhere. I just don't think this government attack on entrepreneurs and small business is a way to grow the economy so we can have the social programs that we need in this country.
You're absolutely right, Darren. We're very passionate about entrepreneurs, business owners, and they talk a lot about how, or they talked about the next generations a lot and how we're going to help them. And I think that helping the next generation get into being business owners, being entrepreneurs, increasing that productivity is what we need to be doing. And that's just not what we're seeing, right? And I'm not a politician. Like, that's not what I'm here for. I want to share this information with individuals out there. I want to share the financial side is a big one for me. The estate planning side is a really big one for me, and these really hit home. So it's important that we talk about them, that we plan for them, and we rant a bit about them because we're upset. Like, we're upset that these changes were not for the better, and we'd like to see better down the road. So I think we've covered a lot today. There's definitely going to be more discussion as we go. I think this is going to be an ongoing discussion for the next couple months, especially with the planning before June 25th and what people are going to be doing. So I'm sure we'll be chatting about this again, Darren, but I think we've got, the hot topics covered for now.
Yeah, I think the last thing, we work with so many great business owners and entrepreneurs and real estate investors. And we know the tax they pay. This perception that they don't pay any tax. I mean, it's just it's crap. They pay so much tax, it's crazy. But they can only take so much before something's going to give. And I feel for all business owners, real estate investors in the country. Hopefully things will get better. And I guess that's it for today. That's the Canada Budget 2024. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to this podcast. If you're listening on YouTube, please like, subscribe, and hit that bell button. If you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. And if you want more information, check out our website, controllandcompound.com, and you can sign up for an education session with one of our wealth coaches.